Stay with that story. I'm joined now by a political analyst from UJ, Professor Mcebisi Ndletyana. Good evening, Prof. Do you agree? Does it automatically bring accountability into our electoral system?
Well, it does to some degree. My reading of the judgment is that you will still have proportional representation. It doesn't mean that proportional representation goes away. That is the party list. My sense is that you will have both. You will have both PR and a constituency-based system. For instance, currently you have about 400 MPs. What might happen, which is what the Slappert report had suggested years ago, is that you might have 200 candidates selected from a constituency election, and then you have 200 from the PR list. And which obviously also means that this is quite drastic, but the scope of that change might not be as wide as we anticipate, because candidates, independent candidates, can only contest a constituency ballot, not a PR ballot. So it means they will only contest, assuming that it is divided into 200 and 200, they can only contest for the 200 seats that are allotted towards constituency voting. So, you know, there will not be as many, for instance, as you would have if they stood on both ballots as constituency candidates as well as the PR party votes, for instance.
So am I understanding you correctly that what we're doing is finally ushering in something beyond proportional representation, which was only ever meant to be for the first few years of our democracy, and now we're going to move into what may likely be a mixed system, as you say, with proportional representation, which is the proportion of votes, and then there's the list of the political party, and the people on the top of the list get in, as opposed to the constituency.
A replication of what you already have in a local government level.
Right, yes, because you can stand independently already in a local government situation. Yeah. So I'm just questioning how automatic it is, though, because surely for an individual to stand, they would need shed loads of money and a system behind them that supports them. So I'm trying to, I know the nuts and bolts have to be worked out by the IEC, and there's a long way to go from here. That's why they've been given two years to sort it out. But what are the next steps, and what are the sorts of individuals that might be interested in standing on an independent ticket?
The attraction of having independence is self-evident. You have a lot of people who are already disinterested because they find existing parties not appealing to them. In South Africa, for instance, the amount or the number of people who go on to register to vote is less compared to the eligible voting population. Right there, you have a massive number of people who are not even bothering to be part of the electoral system. And even of those who do register, about 71% of them actually turn out to vote. So you have a constituency that is not interested, that is looking out possibly for something new. So what this portends is that you will have a much broader choice beyond parties to include credible candidates, prominent candidates. So in terms of interest from voters, you might have a trigger, an increase of that. With that might as well be money. Money to people who are looking for credible candidates who don't find the party system appealing. And even ordinary voters can donate money towards a credible candidate. So in terms of voters' interest, in terms of money, that's not a problem. What might be a problem is putting together an organizational infrastructure. Because even an independent candidate does need a cadre of volunteers to put up posters, to go on to sell his house and tell her about how great I am. So you do need a massive organizational infrastructure, especially if you have national ambition. So that infrastructure will have to be nationwide. And bringing together a group of people, a massive group of people, tend to be very complicated, especially if you don't have a considerable period of time to work together to establish norms and rules, rhythm, hierarchy. people are not easy to control. So it's not a panacea. It will still require a lot of work for an independent candidate to make it work.
And there's still a long way to go to figure out exactly how this new system may work. One thing that is not going to change, it's not going to change how a president is elected, is my understanding. And correct me if I'm wrong, currently what happens is the party that gets the most votes gets to, in Parliament, then elect the president. Is that going to stay the same? What if an individual gets a huge amounts of votes in their individual capacity? They'd never become president, surely.
We have a parliamentary system. Parliament, MPs elect among themselves the president. Unlike a situation, for instance, like the US, where you have congressional elections, meaning parliamentary as well as presidential, people elect the president directly. We don't have that. As far as I can tell, the verdict only directs Parliament to make it possible for an independent candidate to stand for office. It doesn't mean overhaul the entire thing. The only change would be an injection or a creation of a constituency system, right? But in terms of electing the president, the parliamentary system still kicks in. MPs elect among themselves the president. Yes, of course, it does mean that you might have, for instance, the candidate getting the popular vote. That's what you mean. Getting the largest number of votes compared to the PR votes that the various parties get. And you would still have that independent candidate, popular as she might be perhaps, not being elected by her colleagues in Parliament, because her colleagues might prefer to elect their own MP in their own party. So that's a possibility. But what this also means, quite possibly, Sally, is that because you stand to have a wider choice of candidates and parties, you might as well not easily have a majority candidate, or a candidate or a party that wins the majority support. In which case, it then means that you will have a coalition.
And that may well be where it all ends up. Thank you very much for your insights on such an important judgment today. That was Professor Mcebisi Ndletyana from the University of Johannesburg.